I've been driven by curiosity. You might say novelty seeking in some instances, variety seeking. There's a light side and a shadow side to that. Even in places and times where it made sense to stick around and to build roots or allow roots to grow, you might say, I was driven to continue to go pursue the next thing.
Welcome to the Friends with Benefits podcast, an Arcadia production. This is the show all about how to grow in business, lead with purpose, and live with intention. We're your co-hosting couple. I'm Jason.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to the show, friends. Today's guest
Is great.
is so great. I loved this conversation. You actually met him first at B2BMX.
Yeah, he was kind of one of those guys that you meet and you just instantly connect with, somebody you instantly want to be friends with, and figure out a way to get him involved in everything that you're doing.
Yeah, and he also came to the Arcadia Leadership Experience this year, which is where I got to get to know him a little bit better. We're talking about Mr. Jeff Gangemi.
Jeff, the great one, Gangemi.
He currently is at Toptal.
Yeah, practice director. So he's doing some big stuff. He's got a great podcast there as well.
He sure does. This conversation, we talk a lot about a myriad of things. We take a little bit of a winding trail. He's also a coach. He's a dad. He's a devout husband. He's traveled the world many times with his family and taken some leaps that didn't necessarily feel safe, but necessary.
Again, one of those guys you just instantly want to connect with and get to know.
Yep. So I hope you enjoy today's conversation, and we'll see you next time, friends.
See you out there. Howdy. What's happening? Good to see everyone.
Hi, everybody.
It's always fun when we get a podcast and we, actually have a friend that's joining us. Sometimes we get people that we're just meeting, because of the podcast, or some people we've crossed paths with. But this week we've got Jeff Gangemi, who is actually a friend, right? He's got some really great benefits we're going to talk about today. But Jeff, welcome to our podcast studio room.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks for having me. I want to be a friend. I am a friend to both of you, to Arcadia, to your vibes, etc.
Yeah, you fit the mold perfectly, and it's been a fun arc. Like Jeff and I just happened to meet each other B2BMX last year, February, and then got to hanging out with Michael Ingram and Kate DeLeo, who is also some friends, and all three of you guys were all at Arcadia this summer. So we've gone from just kind of casually meeting at a conference to hanging out in Montana together, and now being a part of a community together, and all the things.
That's the dream.
Yeah, it changed my trajectory. Honestly, when I met you and the crew that we met at B2B Marketing Exchange, I didn't realize there could be an alignment of personal and professional in the ways that have happened since. And I'm just really grateful for it. So thanks for being who you are and having me.
Will you
That's
say
amazing.
more about that, Jeff? I'm just so curious about how that has happened for you.
Why now? And how did I not know that this in this way was possible? It was every time I looked to my right at that conference, Michael Ingram was sitting there. Little did I know that he had scoped me out and done the background research on who I was. And he wanted to talk to someone because we had very similar models of our business. His In Tandem business does for RevOps what TopTal and my job does for marketing. It's kind of like a freelance talent marketplace. Anyway, it wasn't just that, though. Even if he had done the recon and understood who I was and that there was potentially some synergy and partnership possibility there, great. But it was also a blast to hang out with him. And he was really free with introducing me to people like Aaron Leader and Yu Yarby. And when I heard you start talking about ALX and the way your interests were in leadership, outdoors, partnerships, men's work, growth on a personal and professional level, greatness, however you define that under Arcadia, I was thinking, is there any chance I'm going to get to Montana this summer for work? And I was like, hell, like the chances seemed so slim. And the fact that it lined up feels just like
it was meant to be. I remember meeting and having similar conversations around your coaching and what you were doing and things we're going to talk about here, and just a natural alignment. So we're grateful to have you here.
Well, let's dive in, because for those of you that don't know Jeff, he's had many lives in his career. there's a story behind each, but just to catch people up, we've had a religion major, you worked in nonprofit, you've done journalism, you've done marketing, you've done agency stuff, like you've done a lot. So as you kind of take a step back and look through all of those, is there a through line you can see now through your career that maybe wasn't obvious in the moment?
That's such a good question. I gravitating toward aliveness and what feels interesting and putting different pieces together. I gravitated towards studying religion because I was interested in culture. I was interested in history. I was interested in spirituality. I was interested in politics. And it was one of the only studies I knew that brought all those things together. Economics, fill in the blank, just movement of humans, anthropology, people around the world. Like, what's the driver of human behavior? So I guess in a big way, it's putting kind of those earnest levels of interest and curiosity about really about humans and the ways humans grow and develop and behave. And then, yeah, so I mean, same with nonprofit work, same with journalism, same with asking questions, trying to understand people. For me, when I got into journalism, I had an internship and a job at National Geographic Adventure, which was magical at the time. It was adventure travel, sounds like the coolest thing in the world. It was less interesting to me than the work I ended up getting at Business Week magazine, where I got to speak with entrepreneurs about what they were most passionate about. And then I saw business was another way of another intersection of a lot of those elements that I talked about with religion, strangely enough. Economics, the way it impacts human behavior, movement of peoples, and politics, et cetera, et cetera. I feel, and so for me, it's following that kind of curiosity into these kind of intersecting areas of human development and behavior, I guess.
I love this because I feel like we are more of the same person than I even realized. I put a post out about this on LinkedIn not too long ago, but like I feel like we follow the same journey. Most people don't know this, but my degree is in theology. I've had a whole career in sales, a whole career in marketing, a whole career now in tech partnerships. And
Were you also
I
a
was
motivational speaker? Did I read in that same post?
I was, yeah, out
That's
of college.
And
I
a
amazing.
high
worked
school
for
mascot. Let's just throw that one in here because
that's
why
all
not?
I'm
Shannon was
saying.
her my high school mascot. My
Oh,
wife Shannon,
really?
who she was her high school mascot. See, there's a lot of overlaps here.
Yeah, and I was just looking for a book, Range. I'm not sure if you've read that book or not. David Epstein, maybe, but it makes a case around like people that are specialists in like one specific thing. You know, those boring people who've only had one job in their entire career,
They're
or
not
those
boring, okay,
I'm
for those of you that are
just kidding.
listening.
Friend. If you've had one job, Dad, it's cool. Versus those people that are generalists who have done many facets of things and lived many lives, like you know we have, right? I don't know about you, and I'd love to hear your take on this, but like especially in the work that I do in the partnership world, and Sam, you as well, like I feel like that gives me kind of an edge in the work that I do and the many different types of conversations and departments and teams I've got to work with. Like, how does that generalist background tend to work out for you as far as an edge goes, or maybe not an edge?
I think that's a really good question. I'm interested in that. And for me, I really think about it as that kind of that curiosity piece in the world of marketing. It's honestly, can you really talk to people and connect with people and start to understand their underlying motivations and behavior? That's the thing that's a general, and that's a skill that literally applies all day, every day. Yeah. And for me, the journalistic set of skills is a really important one that I didn't know I was developing actually during college when I was studying abroad and in northern India and Tibet and Nepal and sitting with people from different cultures from a curious perspective and being able to pull that together into some kind of a meaningful product or a synopsis or a synthesis of what I was gathering. To me, that's what my generalist orientation enables. And then I really formed that consciously and more specifically as a journalist. So like that question asking, again, the real curiosity, the probing into what other people's interests are. This right now, talking about myself, is something I have done a lot less of. I'm often the one asking questions. I even host the Top Towel Executive Guidance podcast where I work now. But that set of skills for me has been formative, and I really think overall kind of is the bedrock of, I guess, what would you call it, an advantage or a leg up or a
And yeah, an edge, advantage. And
yeah.
I do want to kind of maybe take a second to drill into that word curiosity you mentioned there. And I think the edge there is the curiosity. And I've kind of been chasing this rabbit that feels like uncatchable to me, but I'd love to hear your take on it. Is like, do you believe that you can teach curiosity? And if you believe that, like, how can we teach, or what I'm trying to figure out is like, how do we coach the curiosity? Especially people that are kind of younger in their careers, trying to figure this out, may not know what they can do, or those that are even established in their career. But I feel like curiosity is an edge that a lot of folks just don't lead from.
Curiosity. So I'd make 2 points on that. I think the first one is there's a tuning in process that's hard to do probably in the modern world, and probably for young people in general, that kind of allowing themselves to be guided into what is pulling them or drawing them. And there are different levels of their interest, I guess. And so tapping into that and kind of getting into the flow of what that feels like is something that's what I appreciated about liberal arts. I didn't have to take all these prerequisite courses. I just literally could take what I wanted in college, for instance. And then that's kind of a muscle that got built. And so I was more easily maybe able to follow that. And then the other thing in journalism, and why I felt so lucky to have that experience, was I got to ask, and that's what we all talk. We are entrepreneurs to some extent, or we talked with a lot of entrepreneurs or people that are really passionate. Entrepreneurs, when you get to interview them as a writer and that they know they're going to be published for something that's going to help promote their business, that's one thing. But you're literally talking to them about the single thing that they are most passionate about in the world. And how can you not be curious about that when someone is demonstrating that level of passion? So that's, I think one is that tuning in process that is a muscle that you can develop. And then the other is talk to people about what they're most passionate about. And you cannot help but come alive and be inspired and become more curious about how to get more of that for yourself.
I think you're spot on there. Generally, people like to talk about themselves and what they're excited about. So I think that becoming good at asking questions, and that starts with being a good listener, is huge in that curiosity realm. Going back to, I'm not going to phrase this the same exact way that you did, but tuning in, the process of tuning in. So in your process of reinventing yourself, quote unquote, many times throughout your career, like, how did you know it was time to move on to the next thing? Was that intentional? Were you following curiosity? What did that process look like for maybe somebody who's listening that's like, man, I'm in a moment of reinvention. Am I doing this right? How did that feel for you?
It's funny that you use the term process with somebody like me who is not the most process oriented, because it hasn't been, I've been driven by curiosity. You might say novelty seeking in some instances, variety seeking. And there's a certain amount of that there's a light side and a shadow side to that, Sam,
Mm-hmm.
where we've moved a lot. I've been even in places and times where it made sense to stick around and to build roots. Or allow roots to grow, you might say. I was driven to continue to go pursue the next thing. For instance, we were in Vermont for 7 years. That's where we had our babies, and quite well connected, had a good place to live. And it was just about to be the time where my 2 girls were about to go into school, and we would no doubt have created an even deeper community. And part of it was working from home underground with not a lot of light and needing that. But I basically uprooted our family and made us move to Los Angeles from Vermont. People were looking at us like we are crazy. That's not a process, Jason. That's not, Sam. That comes from somewhere else. That's not
Yeah.
coming, you know.
That's following that curiosity, man. For me, it's kind of like I describe it as like I get this itch or this feeling, or you can almost describe it as like a calling that there's a change coming, that something needs to happen. And it's very funny you mentioned 7 years. Like I feel like for me, that happens in like 7-year increments. If I look back at my career and how it's changed, it's like every 7 years is when you start to feel that change.
I also like this story because every time I've had a quote unquote itch or something like that, it's so inconvenient.
I can't imagine something more inconvenient than needing to move from with literally a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old in a comfortable house. I mean, we're in Vermont. We packed them up in a minivan, took 10 days and drove across the country, stopped at Carlsbad Caverns, stopped in Zion National Park, where we discovered there was lice. There were lice in the car. So like
Oh
the
God.
picking up
no.
and the moving on, and then we had to live in a place in the middle of LA, which we'd never spent more than a week or so, in a rental that didn't have washing machine and dryer, with trying to it's not always a pretty reinvention. It's painful. It's
It's a challenge.
a
Yeah.
Yeah.
challenge. It's an adventure. An adventure does not implies risk and pain as well as
It's not
excitement
always
and
fun and
yeah,
glorious. Yeah.
not always
Yeah.
fun and glorious. No great advice there for people considering the career move. I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but yeah,
No, I do love that because I think the honesty around that is really important. Like we can look at the high arc of somebody's life and be like, wow, they've reinvented themselves a million times. That sounds lovely. And yeah, in hindsight, it probably is. But in those moments, it's not sometimes a logical decision or a step A to B process. And you don't know what's on the other side of that. But there's something inside of you that you can't ignore. And I think that that's a conversation that doesn't happen often.
that's why I'm so proud of what you're going through, by the way. About
Well,
Sam. I
thank
know
you.
Sam's in that moment of formation of what's next. Maybe a glamping company, maybe a CEO role of some, or who knows what's
That's
next.
right.
But CEO of Arcadia, I mean,
That's
that's for me,
currently
that's
happening. Yeah.
incredibly
Yeah.
meaningful in itself. But
And I think for all that, you really got to be okay with risk, right? And being able to step out and take that risk. But the beautiful thing about that, and what I've experienced, is that I think the more you follow those urges or callings, and you take a risk and you step out and you make it work, you get proof that you can do this. And what follows proof is confidence. You get confidence on yourself, your ability, and what you can go do and figure out, and you begin to build this life and this career that you've kind of followed just based off, quote unquote curiosity. But over time, you build this life of confidence and ability to go do, whatever the hell you want to go do.
resilience too,
Yeah.
Resilience.
for oneself and also for kids, like for those kids to have to figure out how to adapt from being outside in 20-degree weather and very nature-based experience in Vermont at the school to, wait a minute, you can't have bare feet there. We're living in Hollywood. We moved to the heart of Hollywood, and the resilience of needing to understand and adapt to deeply, deeply new and different circumstances is something that builds what you're talking about, Jason. I think
100%. And it's something that kids these days definitely need.
Yes. I would be remiss not to ask this question, but two things. One, I feel like I just saw somebody post about this FOSO is what they're calling it, fear of starting over, which I think is a very interesting concept. And as adults, as we progress in our life, our risk tolerance becomes a lot less. So I think this story is really helpful for people because A, you can start over. B, you will survive the other side of it. And I think we tell ourselves these stories of comfort. I can't, this, that, and the other thing. And those are all just stories we tell ourselves in truth. Jeff, has there ever been a time in your life where you had a quote unquote itch and you didn't follow it?
just now, just in the last few months, actually. So it's funny because we ended up pandemic hit when we were in Los Angeles, and we decided we needed to come back east, spend a few months in Costa Rica, and had a cool experience on the way back. But deep family roots, especially for my wife Shannon here. She's 20 some cousins and aunts and uncles, and we're living where I've come for over 20 years to visit, and then we've moved here. And it seemed like the reassimilation or the integration into a place like this would be smooth and simple, especially compared to somewhere like Los Angeles, where for me, I was alive. Every experience was new. You could go to the desert on the weekend and go surfing at a beautiful surf break. I mean, you could do so many different things culturally, and it was endless. Here it was subtlety, nuance. Who are we going to connect with? How is this going to work out? And I found myself after 3 or 4 years thinking, I'm out. I'm ready. I believe I've given this the chance that I'd always considered or thought I would need to give it. And I was ready to be out. And I feel like that was a bit of the shadow of that seeking that I've had previously. And it was okay and good and part of my journey to do that a bunch of times like we have done. But this time, once I made that decision just a couple months ago, literally, not to pursue that next thing, even though we're doing a thing in Spain for a few months, as you know, which should be really cool and scratch that itch in a way where, okay, we'll be back in 3 months. Here we are. We're still going to commit to this place. It's harder for me to not do that. So this is the growth for me now, which is staying put instead of doing another reinvention, if that makes sense.
Is that time of like not wanting to do this, not wanting to be here, is that kind of what led you to coaching? And I know we've talked a lot about this and in our conversations and in Arcadia, and you mentioned you kind of got to that point where you said, okay, I need help. And was that part of what led you to coaching, or is it more than that?
The coaching thing, it's a funny story because it wasn't as conscious. Again, I wish I could
Nothing
say
ever
that.
is. It just looks
Right.
like it in
For some
hindsight.
people, I think it may be a little bit more, or at least I assume it is. Anyway, maybe it's not. But for me, it was actually in LA, and we were getting ready to leave, and there was something that felt. I have some degree of anxiety, as a lot of people do, even if I don't present in that way, and that has presented in kind of grumpiness and moodiness and agitation and just I think partially that need to continue to reinvent and move. I'd written an article for my business school alumni magazine about podcasting and different podcasts. I was listening to this podcast of a guy that I'd interviewed, and it auto played from him interviewing Matthew McConaughey into this coach that I hadn't really thought about coaching. And I heard this voice. It was I think there was wildfires outside, so we were kind of locked down inside. There wasn't much to do. It was even over the Christmas break that year, and we weren't coming back east. Anyway, I heard somebody speak to me in a way that I hadn't understood. It felt like a serendipity kind of, or a deeper calling, and that was the coach that I ended up working with for about 2 years.
The one you heard on the podcast?
Yeah, the one I heard on the
Wow.
podcast. I just reached out and I said, "There's just something here. I'm interested." I ended up interviewing a couple coaches because I couldn't just go with the first guy I heard.
Of course.
I was like, I didn't put out an RFP or anything, but I needed to make sure I was, not insane.
Finding the right
And
one.
yeah, but he asked for more money than I ever thought I would be paying for this work, and it was the most powerful work, moment to
Yeah,
moment
I like the way
present.
you phrase it, and then how you said it completely changed like how you show up in life. Can you tell us a little bit more about that for folks that may not know about coaching, or kind of are like, yeah, coaching's cool, everybody's a coach these days, whatever, but like for you, like how did it actually change the way you show up in life?
This was a very particular type of coaching, and he's a men's coach. It was very oriented toward men and men's development. Coaching can be across the spectrum, and it can be so many different things to so many different people. So that's the qualifier. This particular experience for me was addressing fears, moment to moment fears. Really, it started with a lot of breath type work. And we didn't do breath work as in the kind of breath work that my wife now does, which is like a 30 to 45 minute, very active, intense, almost psychedelic experience. This was breath holds we started with. He was sitting with me, pushing me to continue coming back to myself in the midst of a fear. Like it is a truly human animal fear when you run out of breath. Your body is saying you just
You're gonna
physical
die.
reaction, right? You're going to
Yeah.
die if you don't breathe. So developing a higher level of comfort in those periods of discomfort, starting physically and then moving into emotional spheres in relationship, that's what it's all about. Because these different ups and downs and emotional states and all sorts of different states are going to come your way, and how are you able to stay calm in that circumstance. And even he taught me how to sit in the way I'm sitting now, which is, I had not been a client facing person at work. I was in internal marketing teams for 15 years or so. Ended up getting a job as a consultant with Accenture as a strategist, so basically running all the calls with these big clients. And the way he helped me learn to sit in this particular posture, which is with more open chest, it was incredible to see the way people change the reactions that I would receive from people in my ability to command, not in a military command and control kind of way, but in a kind of a confident, assertive, present sort of way, was really powerful. So yeah, it changed a lot of the ways I show up. And those are kind of just the beginning around this coaching journey. And then I ended up obviously doing a training over about a year and a half to become a certified integral coach myself. And that was more recently.
That's awesome. And you're doing men's coaching now, correct?
That's right. On the side, just a couple of clients on the side, because I obviously have this day job and some responsibilities here and there.
What's the thing people think coaching is versus what it actually is?
I think it's very common to assume that there's going to be demonstrable, sustained progress. Can you see my air quotes? That you're not going to take steps back, that you're not going to pursue this kind of spiraling revisiting of a lot of the same issues over and over a span of time. A coach can say, hey, we're going to work together for 6 months. Every other week, we're going to meet. A coach kind of has to sell to some extent to get the person in the door, and really believing in their capacity for change or transformation. But I think what it often really is, and what enables a lot of that transformation, aside from some of that really powerful, intense practices, which I think there's lots of different kinds of coaching. For me, that is critical to do kind of breath oriented work, because it can be such a enabler of state change and nervous system regulation. To me, that's really important. But I think often what coaching is and what enables change is just having somebody provide another set of eyes to identify new opportunities and new potential shifts that you can make in your course and in your path, and just be there side by side with you.
For me, like I reach out to a coach that's always in high school, college, and post college. I had a running coach. I understand what a coach is there to do and help you see, like, all right, here's the mechanics you're not getting right. Here's what you're not doing. So, and I found my coach. I was like, hey, I need a coach who can help me like identify my blind spots. Like I know I'm trying to get to a different level than where I'm at now. I'm having a hard time getting there. And I know there's some things that I'm not thinking through, some blind spots. And then there's some things with myself I need to kind of, walk through and talk through. So like, helping somebody basically clear the path for you and show you the, quote unquote, there's my air quotes, mechanics of, how to improve in this life.
To go even further, I think people are like, okay, we've heard of coaching. The question between like, what's the difference between a coach and a therapist? So let's start there. And then I have a follow-up question.
Oh, yeah. Much ink has been spilled on this question. I think a shorthand, one fundamental difference is therapy often focuses on unpacking the past and often traumatic experiences or developmental experiences in the past. Coaching tends to be more of a present and future oriented practice. So, where are you now? What are the options available to you here and now? What are the behaviors available to you now? And what are the possibilities associated with that? So, to me, it's empowering. I think there's a place for both. I did therapy not so much recently, but definitely have it at various points for periods of time, Freudian and otherwise, with a great person in New York back in the day. But that's a big difference. for me. And there's many ways to look at it, but that's a shorthand that I've often found useful.
That's a good way to look at it.
And this is going to be different for everybody. I completely understand that. But you joke about not sending out an RFP for a coach. I actually think we should start a business for that.
You should. You'd be great. Yeah. I want you to do everything. You guys are so good together, for one. And Sam, your executive level function is just like, it's way up there. That's why I think we were laughing about this glamping business. Like, you could do it. We were talking yesterday in the cohort discussion too. Like, you could definitely do so many different things. I'm so excited for you to find the thing that lights you up in the
We
way.
talk about a lot of things.
I'm sure you do, because there's so much possibility. When you have someone who's so multi-talented that has this applicable set of skills and empowering others in pursuit of these kinds of goals as you have, it's pretty cool. But
well, that's the end of the podcast, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen.
Thanks for listening.
and Sam's great, and Yarby, yeah, you guys are great.
Well, thank you for that. I'm curious, in your opinion, are there characteristics that are a must for a coach? Like, if somebody's pursuing this and sending out an RFP for coaches, what do they need to look for in this individual?
To find a coach for themselves. Oh, I understand. Okay. Wow, that's a really hard question. I think, because I just walked you through my experience, which is full intuition and woo woo. The
Totally.
guy, he showed up. He just happened to appear in this
magic in the
podcast
air.
after Matthew McConaughey. Like, what? This is not a high. This
Say
is not
less.
right. There is this intuitive type of connection that you have with somebody that I think there's a balance that occurs where there's a sense of, I don't want to say comfort, but understanding, or that there's this connection there that's a little bit deeper potentially than just a regular connection, but also that you have this sense that it's not just comfort, that there is something about this person that is willing to hold you to a higher standard than you would be able to. What Jason said before, identifying the blind spots and not just calling them out, but identifying how to more consistently bring them into the light and achieve something new by using those in skillful ways. So someone that essentially, a shorthand way is someone that's going to call you out and call you up to a higher level that feels challenging in some way.
Yeah, and someone who can help navigate that journey to that place as well.
Well, and to your point, Jeff, yeah, I mean, that looks different for every person. Like, the way that I'm called to a higher place is different than Jason. And so, but I think having that intuition around that is a good call out.
And one thing I do want to talk about around coaching is really interesting, because for me, or something I've encountered a lot, which is in sports, for instance, Jason, if you're having a football coach or a running coach or someone, you're assuming that's someone who's been down that path before and has a intimate understanding of methodology or technique or something like that, particularly when talking physical. In the coaching space, if you are struggling in relationship, for instance, or if you're struggling in career or professional development, I think there's a benefit to having someone that has been there, that you can look up to and has a demonstrated track record of succeeding on some level of what is meaningful to you. I think there's value in that. At the same time, no one can be amazing at everything, and no one can have had all the experiences. No one is a guru. I mean, you can be a guru kind of, but it's not, that person is going to eventually come down from that pedestal. So I think being honest with yourself about which areas of their life are most important for you to really aspire to, and which you're okay with, having them just have kind of like a presence and a coaching ability generally, as opposed to that specific set of knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yep, 100%. I actually found my coach. Was reached out to get this guy's boss on our podcast, and we had a couple of conversations, and we started talking. I was training for a big race here in Bozeman, and he was coming out for a big race in Big Sky not too long after. And we started talking about like performance and running. Mentioned he was doing some coaching, and I was like, this is wild. Like, I know I was like trying to get your boss on our podcast, but like, do you have any slots available for coaching? I was like, I really want to work with you.
Uh-huh. And are you working with him?
Yeah, that's the guy I'm working with now.
That's the guy you're working with. There you go.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like him. He's been a great coach. So yeah, go get a coach if you're listening. We couldn't recommend it enough.
Or chat with some people. I think that's the thing that people I often worry about. Am I going to get roped in? I don't think it's like that. I think there's a process you can really openly go through and just like feel people out, and there's value in that too because you get some different perspectives.
Let's jump into talking about some communities. You and I are both part of a few together. You've joined some really intentional communities like the men's group you mentioned earlier, some professional groups. I know you're a part of ours, some growth communities. So for you, like, what's been the driving factor in, like, first seeking these communities and groups out, and secondly joining them?
The epidemic of loneliness, people being
Yeah.
feeling separate. I've worked from home now for 15 years or more,
Wow.
like a ridiculous. I was kind of on the early side. Tim Ferriss came out with the 4-hour work week, and he was preaching this thing. I didn't even know about him. And I was in Argentina in early 2007, working remotely as a journalist half time using a Vonage voice over IP, really shoddy, very terrible internet connection, but getting it done and making it happen. I've been working remotely for a very, very long time. So the desire for deeper connection and community has been consistent over the years. I've gotten it in different ways. Went to business school, lived in different places, but the more intentional communities recently, the first one was this men's group that came as an offshoot of that coaching relationship. The coach I had formed a men's group, which was really meaningful and useful and a really strong continuation of the work we were doing together. Doing it in community with other men facing some of the same challenges was really powerful and useful. There was a retreat in the mountains in Colorado that was part of that too, which was a vital, really, really powerful part of that experience. Yeah. And then more recently, Arcadia, for me, the experience of the self-selection of the people who are willing to be outside and camp and have every session of a conference be under a tent or physically outside that's such the perfect blend.
It's an equalizer.
It's an
Yeah.
equalizer, and I've just wanted that for so long that why does everything have to be so compartmentalized? So a community that truly embraces it was equally possible to stumble into a conversation, have people talking about something deeply personal or partnership, go to market stuff. And I thought that was really amazing. And then Pavilion was part of those connections we made at B2B Marketing Exchange, which feels so long ago because that's been so useful and meaningful and really just fun to build this network of people through that community too.
Someone who intentionally seeks out community, like, how do you personally get a lot out of the communities? Like, I talk to a lot of people that join communities, whether it's Pavilion, any of the others out there, ours or whatever. It's like, how do you personally, get the most out of these communities that you intentionally join?
I think it's been just out of need, honestly, in the same way that I found my first coach out of a need. There was just something that wasn't right, or there was a need for some other type of experience. For me, I joined Pavilion not to just be in a Slack group. It was, I'm going to go to some dinners in New York City. I'm going to go to their events and show up and feel uncomfortable and get exhausted from meeting 1,000 new people, but have that understanding and again, need. It feels like need for me a lot of times to make a few really close connections out of that. So I think it's an understanding that you're going to meet 50, 60 people at an Arcadia leadership experience, but probably come away with 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 really meaningful interactions that can impact your life as you go. And that has happened. And so maybe I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, but maybe
Jeff, would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert or both?
I'm right in the middle.
Okay.
I'm definitely energized by people, which is the definition of an extrovert, but there's a limit, and I like to go to bed early, and I'm not the guy staying up late and feeling energized to the extent of like long nights.
You just
So
described me to a T.
the long nights or the go to sleep
No,
early?
no.
Oh.
9 p.m. is my dream world. Like,
Me too.
yeah.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you consider yourself in that middle zone too then?
I would. Yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
need people. I thrive off of those interactions. I know it's really important, but I also need time to like just be by myself. So
Just throw me in a room full of people and just leave me there for all of
just lock the
eternity, I
door.
think.
He never
You're a
has
full
to leave.
extrovert, is that true? That's great. That's
Would you say
amazing,
that's
I
true,
think.
Sam?
I think that's pretty true. Yeah. Like, you don't really ever recharge. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
5 a.m. pickleball, all that, right? That's your
That's
style.
right.
Yeah.
You're spot on, Jeff. He would go from 5 a.m. to 12 p.m. if the opportunity was there. I've actually left him at parties and been like, "You can get an Uber home. I'm leaving." So,
This is true. And at conferences.
and at
Really?
conferences, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to touch on this because I think it's you've walked us through a high level because we've only been talking for 40 minutes or so, but you've been through a lot of transitions in your life. You have kids, you've moved a ton, there's been career changes, but through that, you have been with the same person for 23 years, which is rare. It's amazing. Congratulations. Shannon's phenomenal. So are you.
I don't know if she'd feel, if congratulations are in order for her, but depends on the day, depends on the week, depends on the year.
So talk about that. Like, what have you learned about growing with somebody? Because Jason and I were literally having this conversation this morning. We have some friends who appear to be growing apart rather than together. What have you learned about this, and how do you grow with somebody?
It reminds me of something we talked about earlier in this conversation. That's the unexpected piece, which is painfully
Mm.
growth and development, transformation and change come with challenge and pain. And I hate to lead with that because that makes it feel like it's all challenge and pain. It's not. That's amazing. I mean, I am just completely fortunate, but we met very early, right after college, 22. We got together right around 23. And so that's a lot of change. That's a lot of growing up to do together. And a lot of, if you are committed to continuing to grow, you can't be perfectly parallel together the whole time. It just doesn't really work that way. But often we tried to be committed on that level.
I mean, it's almost like a muscle, right? It's like there's a lot of, when you're working out, there's a lot of stress and rest that equals that growth, right? Same any sort of performance model has a stress plus rest equals growth. And I think in any relationship at all, there's these stressful times, but like how do you take those stressful times and come back to each other to recover, recharge, grow, figure things out of it, and stress could be anything. It doesn't have to be a major life altering stressful event. It could just be, minor stress here and there, growing a business, having kids, raising a family. But how do you, manage that stress together, come back together, recover, recharge, and continue going? You continue to grow the more that you kind of come back to and from that stress.
I think that what you described is common almost to pretty much every relationship, but then there's the long term, who are you? Is there a reinvention? There's a saying that everyone gets married 3 times, sometimes it's with the same person or whatever, or like you married 3 different people, or there's something like that. And so what you described is real, it's true, it's hard to kind of sit through that and work that muscle, but it's totally worth it. I mean, it's just worth it on every single level. So I started with it's pain, it's just pain and misery, but it's like everything challenging, it's growth and magnificence and the best moments and the best experience and everything I want my life to be
Completely.
is,
I think
yeah.
most people probably get it wrong, and they sit in that pain, they sit in that stress, and they don't come together, own it. They try to deal with it, individually, or they just don't talk about it, or they just kind of stay in that particular zone and don't try to move around it or bring someone into it with them, with their partner or relationship or whatever. And it just begins to take over their life.
Yeah. And there's an expectation that maybe it should be easier, or it should be, if it's so hard, is it worth it? And I think depends on the relationship.
Do you have any? I'm curious about this because I mean, there's so much to talk through here. The reinvention.
This could be many hours of conversation.
Yeah. I mean, just from this conversation alone, it's very clear that you are somebody who prioritizes and seeks out personal growth. I would assume the same of Shannon. And
Oh
as
yeah. Oh
you're
boy. Yeah.
as you're talking through this, you just showed your hands of like that's impossible to move in parallel over 23 years.
At all times. That was
At all times. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be times when you're doing, something and she's not, and vice versa. And do you have any, or have you created any rituals to meet in the middle and kind of bring each other along on that journey?
one ritual is an annual trip to the woods. We go to Maine in the summers. There's a cabin that my great grandfather built in the woods in Maine on a lake. And that feels like a coming together where there's a lot of slow walks. It's an extremely slow pace. And so essentially a vacation in the woods, like really
Is
deep in
this
the
just
woods.
you? Like the kids are not involved?
There's kids. There's kids.
Okay. The kids come.
They're
Okay.
there, but
Okay.
there's room for them to be around, but not in our space. And there's a little, it's on the end of a dirt road, and there's a loop that goes around. My grandma would call it the loop because she was German. The loop, and it's about a
So that
mile.
has stuck.
Yeah, and we can just walk around that loop without worrying. It's 12 or 15 minutes. So you could check back in on the kids. Are they still good? Like if they yelled, and we could still hear them around the loop. So we would have, even when they were. I mean, we didn't leave them until a couple of years ago, for more than a little while, but to still be able to get that reconnection time. And it's sort of, what's this year been and what's this year going to be? It's not as formal as some of those.
Sit down and have your spreadsheet.
Yeah, there's no spreadsheets. Shannon's not much of a spreadsheet person. So, and I'm not really either, but I think that's a big one for sure. I think that, and that feels lucky that we have that opportunity because it just happened as opposed to being conscious again. But I think if there's a through line here, there's an intuition and a drive toward these things. Sometimes it's not conscious, but then getting a shorter and shorter amount of time to recognize that there's a pattern and something really beautiful here that we can then bring into the conscious space and make a ritual and make it into something that we can really grow from is a nice thing I'm taking from this conversation that I've maybe done here and there in the course of the last few years.
And the recommitting of that to each other, I think, is hugely important.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
You sent over some topics to talk about, and I slacked us back to you like, I want to talk to you for 4 hours. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to go through all of this. So I do feel like we're getting cliff notes here, but hopefully this is just an excuse for people to reach out and get to know you. So you have 2 kids, 2 girls. As we've talked about, there's been a lot of transition in your life and their life, but you've built this family that the culture around it is really curious and adventurous. And you've done so while dealing with anxiety, which I feel like a lot of people would say are not typically said in the same sentence. How have you dealt with that? Was that an intention? Was this a challenge? Like, we've kind of talked about this already, but how has this changed the trajectory for your kids? And what does that journey look like?
We love adventure despite the anxiety. There's just, for as strong as the anxiety is, that desire and that love of adventure as a family culture has been stronger. It just has. And so because of the intimacy that created between our 2 girls, and I think the pandemic maybe had something to do with it too. It just brought, like everyone was so close as we all experienced traumatically, but also really connected. I mean, for most of us, I don't think some people were like, I can't wait to get as far away from you as possible. But a lot of us had the opposite experience where it brought us a little bit closer together. And then, so we were very lucky to have that Costa Rica experience on the way back from California to the East Coast, where it was super lockdowny in a lot of places, but we were out in nature together and making the best of that situation. And they kick and scream. They kick and scream a lot when we try to get them to go on longer hikes in Maine, for instance.
That makes me feel better.
Right? But the feeling toward the end, when in spite of themselves, they feel super connected and a little bit tired, like the starch is out of them, and they're in that space of connection with the family that came from that willingness to adventure is really awesome.
Going back to our initial conversation, do you feel like getting them into these adventures is teaching them curiosity?
No doubt. No doubt.
And
The
resilience.
resilience. Boom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We just said it. That's it. Curiosity about other different cultures and resilience to be able to figure out how to interact and be in all these circumstances that can feel unworkable and even scary and just foreign. Yeah. But they've figured it out and they know they will figure it out.
Absolutely. All right, let's bring this home with a couple of hot questions for you.
Oh boy. Let's do it.
Jeff Gangemi, what are you reading right now?
Oh my God, that's so funny. I didn't expect that one. I'm reading Nirvana, Come As You Are, the story of Nirvana.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
The band. Yeah, it's
Good read?
it's a pretty good read. It's made me want to listen to the music more and watch Where Did You Sleep Last Night, the song that they do on Nirvana Unplugged, the last song on Nirvana Unplugged, MTV Unplugged. Do you remember that? Watch
Yeah.
the video of that and watch Kurt Cobain's otherworldliness. It's mind-blowing. It's crazy.
Okay.
So
I have homework.
I was a big fan back in the day. One of my favorite songs is Still Something in the Way. Good Nirvana song. A book recommendation from you for, we'll go with personal development.
He goes to his bookshelf, ladies
I'm
and
just
gentlemen.
looking.
I'll give you one that you just recommended to me that I just finished.
15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. That is an amazing one. Yeah. I don't even need to hesitate on this one. 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership.
There we go. There we go. We
Yeah.
got it.
It's a great,
Beautiful.
That's actually a dynamite book because it is digestible, but it's got like heuristics and super easy to reference rules and behaviors. Are you above the line or below the line? You'll always know that. You'll always be able to reference that. Really, really useful book. And it's awesome about for coaching too. Yeah, I would highly recommend that one.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes for everybody. Jeff, this has been so refreshing. And as it always is, chatting with you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
This has been a pleasure and an honor. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
If people want to find you, LinkedIn, is that the best place? How do we get it?
Yeah, that's the way. That's the way. Yeah. Find me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to connect.
All right. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed today. Push yourself. Go be curious. Go find some resilience in yourself. Fear of starting over. You can do it.
Chase it all down. Be great. We'll see y'all.